best thing to do is always to speak slowly or softly to the individual, and that is one way of then they will know that you're not angry with them.
Hi, my name is Ellis and Atwell, and that was Mr. Mark Ellis. He and Mr. Edmund Grimes will be joining me on this episode of the Vestry show. This week's episode is about dating, courtship, and marriage. We will have a chance to talk about what is courtship, the importance of listening and communication, and the benefits of support from family and the church. We hope our discussion helps you in your journey and you enjoy. Good afternoon, gentlemen. One of the things I want to know is, what is the importance of friendship in forming a foundation before having a relationship?
I think it's very important. I advise my 3 sons, all of them, to 1, keep a number of friends. Don't go sampling, but keep a number of friends. They will get to know who is nice from who is not nice. And then eventually you pick one who is, 1, available, and 2, who you like and who likes you as well. I think it is ideal. Love at first sight can fail. Sometimes you don't always get it right. And but I think I more appreciate a situation where people get to know each other as friends first, and then they fall in love.
Okay.
Yeah, well, actually, that is basically what it is. Dating, the first step in getting in the progress to be married is to date. So you should date more than one person. You get to know them better, and that is one sure way that you will know exactly who is the person for you, whether or not the marriage will last or fail. Or you will know a lot more about the person by going on dates on a regular basis.
Okay, and how do you define dating and what is courtship? Because I think what you all talk about when you all say dating is different to what we talk about today.
Okay. Well, I see the courtship as knowing that, okay, this is my girlfriend. This is the only person who I am dating now, or the only person who I'm really going out with serious, and who at some point in time I may decide that I want to marry this person. I want to have that, that long-term relationship, which hopefully will end in marriage.
Right. Okay, because today we often seem to think that if we're dating someone, it should be only that person, and then people can get jealous and so forth even after a couple of weeks of knowing somebody and so forth. So you advise taking some time to get to know the person first before you actually become exclusive and you consider that courtship.
Right, yes. Well, yeah. With dating, the reason for dating more than one person that you would look for a specific individual eventually that you can marry to. And that is the one that you will then court. But you must start by dating. You cannot just go date one individual and expect that this is the one for you. It doesn't always work. It can work for some persons, but it doesn't always work out. So You have to date more than one person, and after you've selected that individual, then you go on to courtship. Courtship includes developing a relationship with a specific individual that will lead to marriage.
Okay.
That is what the courtship then starts along that path.
Okay, interesting. And what specific things are you usually looking for when you're dating someone?
You can look at things like finances. How does the person manage money? The attitude of the person. You can even ask them questions that will find out something about the person, the kind of family they're from, etc. Those kind of things you will get to find out. But when you're on a date, you just go eat ice cream and probably hold hands or something. But when you come down to the courtship, that individual can take you home to their parents, and from there on you get to know a lot about the individual's parents, the kind of family they're from, the way they live, etc. And that's how the courtship goes there.
Okay. How important is celibacy before being courting someone or being married to someone? How important is it to pay attention to things like not having premarital sex and so forth?
Right. Well, I think both Mark and I subscribe to Christianity.
Right.
And we know clearly what the Bible says.
Right.
And therefore, that is the rules. Those are the rules by which we abide. And that's the rules by which I will advise anyone to abide. And the truth is that I think God put these things in place because we know that premarital sex can lead to children.
Right.
And I think it is ideal that children are raised in the family setting, in a nuclear family. Mommy and daddy there, both raising the child. I see far too many situations where, there are problems resulting from a relationship that goes bad, and yes, some relationships go bad after marriage. That is true as well, but you see situations where relationships go south before marriage, and then there is a child in the midst, and some problems can arise.
And one of the things to pay attention to would be to make sure that y'all have similar values, right? Common core beliefs.
Yes,
before becoming married. Right?
definitely. Mark spoke about one of them just now when he spoke about finances.
Yeah.
And my understanding is that most relationships that fall apart, that quite often something to do with money, finances is a factor. And it is a good idea that the couple have mutual agreement on their approach to things like spending money, how to save, or not necessarily how to save, but saving towards a goal. And other core values might be things like religion, whether or not this relationship that will lead to marriage, whether or not both partners want children.
Yeah.
Because I think nothing can be more difficult than, not nothing, but it's going to be problematic.
Yeah, if one person wants children.
One person wants children and the other doesn't, and you've only disclosed this after marriage. Yes. Yeah. And again, core beliefs and the way how we live. For example, let's say one partner wants to settle down and live a quieter lifestyle, something of the sort, and maybe be very active, for example, in the church. And the other partner is more so interested in, let's just say, partying every Friday, Saturday, and Sunday night.
Yeah.
And the one isn't interested in going. Well, that may lead to problems. It will likely lead to problems in the long term. And I think that is one of the reasons why the friendship is so important, so that people get to understand each other and know where the other person's head is before they commit to a marriage.
One of the things too is that even when you're courting and you're looking at you're Christians, the type of religion you belong to, the denomination, because two people of different denominations sometimes cause problem, even though they are both Christians. So you also look at that. That has a part to play, especially when it comes down to the children.
Right.
You have to be setting out which
church you should go
to. Yeah, that's one of the issues that I kind of raise in that situation.
Okay. And what are the more minor differences that you think somebody can overcome, and how does compromise and understanding each other's perspectives play a role when it comes to that?
I think we have to be always mindful that even though it's a couple, they're two individuals, and we may like different things. My wife may like movies, I may not. So I am quite happy to go do something else. Well, say she enjoys a movie, I may be happy to go and tinker with my toys, my tools, that is, and build something or something of the sort. She may prefer to be in the garden at times, and I may prefer to do something else. So those, when it comes to, let's say, hobbies and other things, and how we do things, I may be very meticulous in the way I do things. My wife may be able to do them very quickly.
Right.
I may like how it's done when I do it. I may be able to live with how it's done when she does it, but I might appreciate the fact that she's able to get through with it much faster than I can. So, yes, we are individuals. We're two different people, and therefore we're going to have different ways of doing things, and possibly like different things. But I think Mark mentioned the core values, and that's where I think the biggies are. I think a lot of the other little things you can live with. You can compromise.
Okay, and I find even in friendships, sometimes you have to take some time to get to know somebody, because you might meet some person and something might really like, this annoys me the way they do this,
Right.
But after time, and you realize like this is why they do it, and it doesn't seem that bad after a while, right? So sometimes just taking some time to be patient and understanding, can help.
Yes.
And thinking about that is that the person may be a jovial person and they crack the kind of jokes that you don't appreciate.
Yeah.
I mean, that is going to get you right up a wall. But yet, the person may be nice in the way they crack all these jokes and they're weird.
Yeah.
But that's the thing that you have to live with if you marry, but you will still eventually find that person to be the type of, you can still find that person to be the type of person you can see yourself living forever with.
Mm-hmm.
You will just have to make adjustments. Because in marriage, you are, you cannot be the perfect person. You cannot look to find the perfect wife, but you have to try to be the perfect person for your wife. And she, in turn, has to be the perfect person for you. And that's what makes a marriage really work.
Okay. And in that context, real perfection is an attribute that belongs only to God.
Right.
So, and as Mark said, you will not find a person who is perfect and pleases you in every single way. As a matter of fact, that will become rather boring. But yes, you get the picture. You're going to have some differences from time to time, and you sort them out and you go forward.
Okay, and what support does family play in culturing an interest, first of all, in being married, and a respect for young men and women, in young boys and young women, families and the church, the early life of a person?
I think it's important. In my marriage, I benefited from very supportive families on both sides, both my wife's side and on my side. My parents, they liked my wife, Denise. As a matter of fact, they liked her so much that after a short while of her coming home, like me, I remember my father said, listen, if it ain't her, don't bring anybody else in. But, they liked her. They liked her for me, thank God. And I could see why. I think I chose well. Yes, when you have that supportive family, it helps. And you also mentioned the church. Like Mark, I know Mark and I were members of the same couples fellowship at Bethel. Denise and I joined that couples fellowship. I think the first session was 2 weeks after she and I got married. And we learned so much from the more experienced married couples. It was like let's say if you have a car, let's say the marriage is a car, it was like preventative maintenance. You learned so much, and you learned of possible challenges even before those challenges occurred. And I found it really helpful. So yes, I think the church can play a major role when it comes to supporting, especially when we have a couples fellowship or a couples ministry where couples can come together. And then you realize, for example, that one couple may realize that, So you also have that challenge with the wet towel being left on bed or something like that. I'm not, I'm not blaming anybody here. Or, so this is also a challenge, and therefore, hey, well, I'm not the only person, and you may realize for one body, it's no big thing. So that may become one of the things that eventually, you either compromise on, or somebody comes to the conclusion that, so this, me leaving the towel here on the bed is really getting under my wife's skin, or something like that. I gotta make an effort
To be different.
to be different. Yes.
Yeah. One thing that I know from my family, my parents didn't used to go to church actually but I grew up in the church, the Testament Church, God in Redmond Village, and we always had to go to church. But then my parents didn't go, but yet it's still enough that we still have to go. So you see, when it comes to a situation like that, you are still guided in some way by your parents along the spiritual line. So we went to church like that. My mother and my parents actually met Beverly. They were quite acceptable of her, because they would have known from just probably looking at her, know that this is a nice person, and then they would have been dating for about 3 to 4 years, about 4 years before we decided then that we would get married. So she would know that I would have known her a lot, and she would come by us and get to know the family, etc. So that is one of the guidance you can get. As long as you have parents that even if they don't go to church, but they still have the religious beliefs and encourage you to go to church and to stick to your religion, then you can have a successful marriage.
Okay.
I
That's interesting
remember as
because.
well.
Go ahead.
Sorry, I remember as well. Sometimes my parents might say things to me that early in my marriage I was still studying, and sometimes there would, even though the time that I spent was not at the time a problem to Denise. I remember sometimes my parents would still have a word with me and say, you should really do X or Y, or you should really do this. And I knew that they were saying it because they wanted to see me become a better husband, or better at being a husband. Maybe you might need to give up some time for this and make time for that. And they did it. They said it in the interest of, seeing the marriage work, seeing it last, and therefore, again, that support that you referred to, family support, can be invaluable.
It's interesting that y'all stress preventative measures so heavily, because we often wait until something is like basically going bad and people discussing divorce and so forth, and then they look to see if they can find something like couples counseling or something to help, right? So it's interesting that y'all talk about getting help and finding support and fellowship before you have these kind of problems. I want to talk about communication within the relationship as well, right? As young people know, we often don't really want to communicate, right? Sometimes I feel like, if you stay in your corner, I stay in my corner, I go on my TikTok, you go and do your little hobby over there, and we good when we got a problem, we discuss it, but it's not always a situation where we want to, sit down and talk through things and just be communicating all the time or whatever. But I feel like y'all generation spent more time communicating. We kind of spend more time in our bubble, right? What do you think we have lost, and how do you see communication as important in your relationship?
Communication is the most important aspect of any relationship, whether it is between you and girlfriend, you and your wife, or sometimes even in workplaces. Because one of the things that you will relate that James chapter 1 verse 19 said, quick to listen, slow to speak, and slow to anger. And you will relate that if you adhere to those laws, you will realize that communication will always work well. Because sometimes you don't always interpret what the person says the way it should be interpreted. And that is one of the reasons why we would then speak not merely in an aggressive manner, but you really don't mean it. Sometimes you don't always mean something about it, but it comes over, because that's what happened between my wife and I sometimes. She will say something and I ain't quite hear, but I retorted with something now that offends her.
Yeah.
So you have to try to listen and then speak slowly. That will work.
Yeah, the communication is vital. It is the lifeblood. It helps both partners to understand the context of the other person's life. So my wife and I, we often talk about any and everything. If I kept in my bubble, let's say, for example, I really have a lot on my mind, and for some reason I went quiet, and I'm thinking about, the project outside that I want to get through with, the thing that I may have to stay at work late with, some other challenge. And imagine my wife probably, I'm in my bubble, and imagine her possibly wondering, what's wrong with him? But if now she understands, because we talk so often, I got this thing tomorrow, this thing to be done outside, what I can get through with it, so on, all these things going on, then she understands the context of how I'm functioning, and may then be able to give me some space so I can then get into the bubble that I need to get into to get these things done. So yes, the communication is important, and at the same time, it's also important to give each other space in the relationship to be fulfilled and to function as people and to do the things that make us happy, to spend the time in the garden, to work or play with the tools outside, and those different kinds of things, even to hang out with friends and so on is also important.
Yeah. I heard something interesting in what you said just now, right? Because as men, we often feel as though we have to be the person to be supportive. We have to be the person to carry the load and the burden and support her. But you just mentioned also letting her in your bubble and allowing her to support you when you have a lot of work and so forth too. Right? So talk about that for a bit.
Right. That is, I can think of so many examples. As I said a little earlier, I was still studying for a very rigorous program in the early years of my marriage. Okay, and when it came to support, Denise was very supportive. Our children eventually came along, and I remember some evenings where I'm really supposed to go off and study, but say one of the children is crying or something like that and needs some attention, and I'm there trying to be do the fatherly things and to spend some time helping out. And she would say to me, all right, look, but you need to get this thing over with, so you go on, I'm gonna handle it. And which she did quite often, and I'm eternally grateful to her for that. I'm indebted to her for all of those years of that kind of support. So yes, the support is vital. Yeah.
Okay. Mark, you just mentioned about sometimes misinterpreting what somebody is saying and jumping to anger. How do we express ourselves in a way? Because sometimes you might feel hurt, and in doing so, you end up hurting someone else. Right? So how do we express ourselves in a way that we still show love and often keep our opinions kind of open, our minds kind of open when we're hearing somebody else's opinion and recognize that they might be hurting what they're saying as well, instead of lashing back at them?
Well, that is the main reason why you have to listen first. The first thing you have to do in any relationship is to listen before you respond. If you don't quite understand what we say, then you can ask the person to repeat it. Otherwise, you'll find yourself going down the wrong road with it. So listening, you just have to listen. Or the one sure way of getting around it is to answer to repeat. Or to speak soft words. Because if you don't hear and you think that is something that offends you, that is when you're going to lash out.
Yes.
And you should try not to be, that lash out. Not especially if you know you don't understand. Well, really, you don't quite know that you did not quite understand what was said to you. You just responded to what you think you heard. So the best thing to do is always to speak slowly or softly to the individual, and that is one way of letting people know that you're not angry with them. Even though it may be something that, let's say for instance, the garbage was still carried out, and you know that it is your job, but you didn't take it out, and the wife says, "Oh, we only carried the garbage this morning. You know that you're supposed to carry out every Monday." Rather than getting annoyed, say, "I'm sorry, I'll try to remember it to do it every Monday," or something along that line, something that would please her, and that would cure the situation right there, rather than going into a battle between the two persons.
Soft answer turns away wrath.
That is exactly what I would say.
Yeah. And as Mark spoke about listening, yes, we must be prepared to listen and look both partners, and also insist that we are listened to, so that we understand. I think that there's a saying, steel sharpens steel. And as a result of listening and trying to appreciate the other person's point, and the other person listening and trying to appreciate your point, there'll be differences, but with those differences, hopefully we will grow over a period of time.
And that's listening to understand, because sometimes we often just listen to respond.
Right.
Precisely.
Yes.
And before we've heard what the other person has to say, we're already thinking of how we're going to clap back.
Right.
And that's one of the reasons why some people, at least a gentleman wrote a book called "Men Are From Mars and Women Are From Venus," because the way they respond to things is quite different from how a lady will respond to it. So they think that men are from Mars and women are from Venus.
Here's something that worries me when it comes to the listening to respond. Simply to respond. I think in relationships you need to be able to have a discussion. If you're listening to respond, simply to respond, I think you're listening in order to only to respond. I think you're trying to win the argument. And the aim really and truly is not to win the argument. The aim is really to understand. And when I say argument, I don't mean a loud, aggressive argument. I mean
A discussion.
yes, you need to be able to have a discussion. Because when we listen, and we listen with the aim of understanding, and if the other person reciprocates, listen with the aim of understanding as well, then I'm just going to give a crude example. Let's say, in whatever the situation is, my conclusion before this discussion, my conclusion was right, quote unquote right. Even if my wife agrees with my conclusion, but at the same time, when I listen with the aim of understanding, or vice versa, then it's not only a matter of right or wrong, but it's also now understanding how the other person feels in the situation. And I think for when it comes to a relationship, if it is going to last, you need to understand feelings as well. Yes.
And one of the things you were like that, and this goes right back to when you are courting. If you're courting and you discover that one person, whether male or the female, wants to be the dominant individual to win every argument, something is wrong. A problem will always occur if two introverts married each other. You will discover that one wants to always be dominant, always be the leader, so to always win the argument. So you have to discover that somebody has to give at some point in time, and that starts friction within any marriage. I don't know if there's any way in which an individual, let's say a married husband, can cause the woman to not be so explicit, not as explosive actually in what is being said and done at that time. Find another way around where the person can give in. I don't know if there's any way that would happen, but I know it has happened. I've met many people who've had problems because the one of the two parties always want to be the dominant one. They want to win the argument. But an introvert and an extrovert will mesh. Just like the North and the South Pole of mining. We work together. That's one way you have to.
That's
If you're always winning,
Right.
if one person is always winning, I think quite often it means something is wrong because we're not always right in every single situation.
Right.
And if we're always winning and another person is always giving in, then eventually resentment is going to build. And you and the person who is always winning because they can shout the loudest or they're the most articulate, growth stops for the relationship if instead of the building, it's no, whatever I say goes full stop. Okay, all right, have it your way. You're right. You win. Eventually, if I take that approach, I must win all the time. Eventually, my growth is going to stop as well because nobody can tell me that I'm wrong.
Because if one is always winning and one is always losing, the one who's always losing will feel that I'm stupid, or that something's wrong with me. That no matter what idea I come up with, it cannot be used. So something is wrong with me, and then that causes friction again.
And the one who is always winning, they also feel that the other person is silly and inferior to them. That's a recipe for
unhealthy.
No.
Okay. Right. So when it comes to dating, what is your advice approach when it comes to dating? Do you advise dating apps, Facebook, WhatsApp, parties, bar, church, youth group? Where do you think you should meet that special someone, or do you just think that you could just meet them anywhere, in bus terminal, anywhere?
I met my wife in the library one day. Yes. We were supposed to be studying. We got a little bit done. But I think that afternoon we talked more definitely we talked more than study. Yes. I think you can meet them anywhere and sometimes and discover, hopefully discover each other as friends, and then the friendship grows. I've been married for a very long time, over 31 years. There were no dating apps in those days. I don't know. The dating apps scares me a little bit because I think people can put whatever they want there and create an image and it may not be real. I mean, that can happen when you meet a person too. The person can put on, and let's say, I don't know, I'm just pulling some examples of this guy, maybe wear some flashy clothes, give the impression that they're very wealthy, do some of all kinds of things, when really and truly it's just a facade. It's just a shell. And when that happens, when we pretend to be someone who we are not, eventually it's going to be discovered, and hopefully earlier rather than later. Yeah.
Well, I want to tell you how I met my wife. Strange enough, we met in St. Lucia. We went for an Easter weekend. She was actually on the same flight as I was on, but I never did see her before we got to St. Lucia. And we started talking. When I saw her, this pretty girl, and we said I will talk with her from then. And when we came back to Barbados, we corresponded with each other like that. We called each other and spoke and da da da. And from there, the relation Courtship grew. So these modern day dating apps and think that people are using today, I don't think they were, because she also belonged to a church. At the time, I wasn't going to the church as steady as I was. Then she told me to come and go with her to a church, and from there on, we became very close friends. The relationship blossomed. Then I started to court her as to become my wife, because I saw it fit to marry this person, and that from there it went. But when you date, you learn a lot about the individual. You can learn about the education, the family background, the kind of the individual he personates, such as whether or not they like cooking, they like what they like going to cinemas, movies, or whatever. And if it's a person that belongs to something that you don't like really, you will ask them about it or speak to them about it. But if you just meet someone on an app or some Facebook or something and then just decide to go out with them, and or rather they don't take very long before they wind up being together, you don't know as much about them that you should. But you have to meet the person, take them out, and you will learn a lot of them, especially when you go home with their family, you know how the family situation is, the things they do, and such like. And that is how I believe modern day people should continue along that route. But, you know, we discovered today that many people now go out and they will just go on a date, and next thing you know, they show, even if they are Christians, because I've seen this creeping into the Christian society today now. That's why one of the problems we have here is that lots of Christians are having children and they are not married. And no one seems to be too concerned about it, because that is the way the world is going, they will say. But I don't think it is right. I think you need to know the person thoroughly, be more committed to Christ, and go from there.
Yeah. Alex, so you have me thinking about this dating app, or these the dating apps.
Yeah, they work. They work for America.
I am wondering, of the people who put an image there of themselves, what percentage of those people actually get someone interested in them? When it comes to both sexes, male or female, I'm wondering, I have a very strong feeling that only a small percentage of, so let's say if for example, 100 men put their information out there on a dating app, and let's say 100 ladies, I have a very strong feeling that most of those 100 ladies will probably be interested in 10 of those fellows, and chances are 100 of those fellows will probably only be interested in 10 of the ladies, and therefore a lot of people will be left out. That's,
I guess so, but I like to look at it a different way too. If you put 100 gentlemen in a bar and 100 ladies in a bar, you're probably not going to have a much higher success rate among those same 200 people in that bar.
true too,
right?
Yeah.
More than likely, the 100 gentlemen and 100 ladies might meet someone, you know, in various areas. Like he said, he went to St. Lucia and met somebody from Barbados,
Yeah.
right? But you can't expect to put somebody in a box, right? And everybody gonna just pair up in a box. Right. So yes, the dating app is supposed to work and whatever, but it's just a box. It's the same way you meet somebody in a bar, the same way you meet somebody at church, the same way you meet somebody on a flight to St. Lucia.
Yeah.
It's just a box, right? Everywhere is just, this is just one environment where you can meet someone.
Okay.
You understand what I mean? But I don't think it has a particularly higher or lower chance than, because what was the chances that Mark was going to meet his wife on a flight to St. Lucia and she's from Barbados?
Right.
That's crazy. What was the chances you was going to meet your wife in a library?
Yeah.
You understand what I mean? God just works in mysterious ways. So I'm sure that there are some success stories, on the dating app.
Yeah, probably.
Right?
Probably.
I guess the disadvantage of it is that, as he was saying, you don't get to meet the person in person and get to know their family and know their true situation, because from behind a screen it's so easy to hide so much.
Yes.
You know?
Yeah.
And when you have the comfort of sitting at home and putting any image you want on the internet, right? What are the chances that you're gonna say the truth? What are the chances that most people are gonna feel comfortable putting who they really are and expecting to be accepted, right? We have so many insecurities in our life. Let's be real.
Yes. Yeah.
Right? So if you can hide it, if you can pretty up any image and only put your best qualities online, then that's what you will do.
Chances are that's what you will do.
Right?
Yes.
But when it comes to being in a relationship, in a marriage, you can't hide that. Right? When you're living with someone, that person seeing from day to day, every day, you can't put on the pretenses that you would have put on even in a high school relationship or when you were dating. You know? So I wouldn't probably date that, but at the same time, it's just one environment.
Yeah.
You know?
Yeah.
But after dating, let's say we've dated,
Right.
and we've met someone we're interested in, you know, we've determined that they have, you know, a supporting family, you know, they come from a Christian background, have, you know, the same core beliefs as we do, and we begin to court them, right? We determine this is someone that we're interested in marrying, and we begin to court them. How do we determine when is the right time to marry? How do we determine, okay, now is the day I pop the question?
Yeah.
Is there like a signal? Is there like, you know, God says to you, all right, now you did, you've been going long enough, you know? Or do you look at where you are in life? Do you look at where, if you finished school already, you said you did it when you were still studying.
Yes, I so past school. I was already working as well. I wasn't
Right.
studying full time.
So do you look at your financial situation? Do you look at your age? What qualities do you look at to determine, okay, now is the right time, I can sustain a marriage, you know? What do you look at?
One of the things I know I look at is like, you have to look at what you want in life first thing. You want to be married. You want to have children. You take your age into consideration. I'm married about 29. You're married for 32 years now, going to 33. And the thing about that, if you set a goal as to when you want to achieve certain things in life, and you met a person, and that person fits into your spectrum of things, you know, well, I am going to be 5 years, 6 years, 10 years before I marry, because time is getting away. And then if you have, if you met your fiance, and you have a fiance, and then she also is interested in marriage, she's not going to let you go all that length of time either. Not if she's a Christian. You shouldn't be married. So you take those things in consideration and then say, look, now is the time. Just give her a date and go from there.
Yeah. So I think you need to be able to create as well the financial stability. You need to know that the couple can be reasonably independent. That is one thing that I can think of that is going to be important, and that both of you feel settled in your mind that yes, we can really make it. We've been going for, I don't know, maybe 2 years, 3 years. I'm a little scared of anything under a year or two.
Not so sure.
Yeah, my wife and I, we courted for just shy of 6 years, but we were very young when we started courting. I was 19. We got married when I was 25. So, and I remember thinking in the very last year, pretty often throughout the very last year, are we ready for this? Are we ready for this? And one day, one of my very supportive relatives said to me, I don't know why you don't hurt to marry the girl. And that was in April. And by the 30th of June, that very same year, we were married. I got married.
Wow. Yes. You should court for any long time like this. You know, the time is running away. You should make up your mind early. When I married, my wife wasn't working. I was the only one working. You know, we didn't live, but we decided we were married. we can rent someplace, we can do this. You have to look at these things that you can achieve later in life. But marriage, get that out of the way early. Especially if you're looking at getting children and all kind of things like that. You have to make an early decision, because no lady likes, at least no Christian lady would want to be courted for 10 years, 12 years. I know people have been courting now for 15 years. I would like to be married. They tell me they would like to be married, but they don't want to put the word to the person that's their husband, which I don't think is right. I want to tell him.
Yeah.
But if you were a Christian, you would do that. But if you are non-Christian, or you are Christian, he's non-Christian, that is another problem. How can you tell this man that you want to marry and he doesn't want to marry?
Yeah.
See, so that way a situation, a problem comes in that type of situation.
Yeah. Most people need to want to be able to need to want to do this thing, and I fear that if one wants to get married and the other doesn't want to, that's probably a warning sign, that's a red flag, that something, that all isn't right.
And that is not the person for you to, that right there and then, that as long as you get somebody that way, you mean what you want to do, be a Christian.
Yeah. Unless there is a very good reason that, look, we are not financially stable yet, or something, or we can't be, we can't sustain ourselves. Remember, Mark had a plan. Mark knew that he was able to rent, and knew that they would be able to get the bills paid and so on.
But so you're still relying on family support for money and stuff like that. Like maybe it's best to wait.
Well, yes, it might be best to wait. Or have a plan as to how you are going to make it work, and how you are going to sustain yourselves, rather than have to depend on mommy and daddy for support. You need to be able to have a plan and know that, look, we're mature enough to be making this decision.
And I think it's important too for both persons to be around the same age in a certain sense. It's not necessarily like the exact same age, but at least within the same age range. Because let's say you're like 50 and the other person is 18, like you already basically have experience in life, right? You already made it basically, and this person is now like very young and have a different outlook on life to you, right? And they probably can't see and understand a lot of the things that you do. So what would be your advice in a situation like that?
50 and 18, that 50-year-old is Robin Crusoe in Kadira. I know of marriages where the age range is wider. Sorry, not as wide as 50 and 18, but where there is a difference of 10 or 15 years and so on, and the marriages are quite happy and lasting. But both of the partners need to be mentally mature enough to know that this is what they want, and this is what they want for the rest of their life, that they're happy with this person for the rest of their life. Lots of variables will come in there. It may not always be, let's say, for example, a 50-year-old man wanting to marry a 25-year-old girl. And let's say, for example, this fellow has already been through a marriage, already has children and that kind of thing. And this young lady is also looking forward one day to having children of her own. And then imagine that hubby is saying, no, I want no more children. I worry about the 50s with the 25-year-olds.
Because they're not really in the same place, right?
Right.
One of the things about a marriage is, I guess, you kind of go through things together. So if you already gone through it,
yes,
and I know we'll go through it,
and I don't want you to go through it,
right.
Then, most young people like to go out. Most young people like to socialize. Yes, older people too. But it may come to a stage where somebody wants to live a calmer life, whereas in some situations that younger person now feels as though they haven't lived yet.
Yeah. Or being stifled.
Yeah.
Or the older person they want to socialize with, person of age, and then the younger people now, the younger person that you're married to, they're gonna go and socialize with the people that are on their age too.
Yeah.
So, you don't really want when this older guy coming to fit, how would he fit in with the younger people? And that is gonna work out. But from the time they are, before they are married, and she wants children and he doesn't want, but then she will have to decide, well, I either have to marry him or decide not to marry him. You can't just marry him unless you decide, get married this man, but he's soon dead, and then you get this money or something. That's the only thing. But if you want children, and this man is an older man, he doesn't need any children, I think you shouldn't marry him at all. That is point. You should not be married.
Okay. Any closing remarks? Any final advice and tips that y'all have for youngsters, that going to walk this path?
When it comes to resolving conflicts, we touched on a point that is very important: that listening. And here's something that used to work for me. Sometimes you want your partner to understand that as far as you are concerned, they have done something wrong. They may not see anything wrong with it. And with their action or inaction, whatever it may be. And sometimes just saying to them, you did so-and-so or you didn't do so-and-so, it may not get through. Sometimes that may be step one. Step two, all right, well, this is the way I felt about it. That may get through. And especially if the person cares about your feelings. And at the same time, or step three, going a little bit further, then sometimes it is necessary to say, all right, well, I want you to step into my shoes. How would you feel if I did so-and-so, or if I failed to do so-and-so? And with that listening, then I think the understanding and the compromise comes about, as opposed to, instead of taking the approach of just quarreling. Arguing, debating, whatever you call it. They shouldn't be able to win.
Yeah, to prove your point.
Yes.
Well, I have a slightly different slant in that I will mention from when we first got married, we joined the Methodist Couples Fellowship, and it is one of the vehicles through which we have learned a lot. And we think if there are any persons who are interested in now getting married, you will learn a lot from senior persons within the church that are married for a long time like that. Because you will discover that we all have the same problems, the same issues we go through. When we first joined that, as I said, you think that you're the only person experiencing this kind of problem, the wife quarreling about this or quarreling about that, but you will discover that, hey, we all had that, we went through that. So it's best when anybody that's young now getting married, they can learn a lot from any senior couple, especially in the religious spectrum of things, in terms of Christians, any Christian person. So that's what it is. Presently, my wife and I are the leadership couple of this same organization, the Methodist Couples Fellowship.
Okay, all right. Thank you both, gentlemen, for this chat. And I think that myself and the other young persons who watch this video will learn a lot from this conversation. Thank you for watching. If you enjoyed this conversation, leave a like and share it with a friend. This has been the second episode in our series with conversation with Christians who have experienced life and are seeing and reaping what the seeds they have sown have borne. Subscribe to our channel, turn on the post notifications to get updates on episodes to come in this series, and stay tuned for more content from the South Caribbean youth. Hope you join us next time.